Burnie Thompson.
Interesting stuff. I'm looking at a headline. Don Gates, president of the Florida Senate, quote, throws support behind medical marijuana. The great forbidder, Don Gates. I'm telling you, when you and I bring these things up over and over and over, people don't like to have nicknames like great forbidder. People don't like to have nicknames like federal supremacist. And Don Gates, being the president of the Senate, his son is also an elected official. His son, Matt Gates, is a representative for the state of Florida. And Representative Matt Gates took a good, honest look at medical marijuana about a month ago. And he became convinced that it is an option that patients and doctors ought to be able to have without politicians and bureaucrats getting in between, especially when he learned more about the kinds of medical marijuana, the kinds that don't give you a high, but give you the medicinal value to perhaps either stop you from having seizures or as a very, very effective anti-nausea medicine. Now, if it were up to me, I think if a patient and a doctor agreed on using marijuana as medical treatment, even if the patient felt a high, it's no damn politician's business or bureaucrats. But that's just me. But the science of it has changed, and there is not an excuse in the world to stand between a doctor and a patient ever, but not here even anymore. I'm going to share with you later on how Representative Matt Gates has gone to support this treatment that has done wonders for young girls with, this one girl had 200 seizures a day. And this treatment has dropped her seizures down to about 2 a month. And I am thrilled, and I'm going to tell Don Gates, the president of the Senate, that I am very, very thankful that he took off his great forbidder hat and now appears to be supporting medical marijuana. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Also, we need to make sure Don Gates, the president of the Senate, understands the value of standing for the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment Preservation Act. By the way, this is the topic on our next TV show. Sunday night, if you're in Bay County on Fox 28 at 9:30, our new TV show, Daryl Day and I talk about the NRA versus the Second Amendment. Now, the NRA is not opposed to the Second Amendment Preservation Act, but they sure haven't supported it. It's pretty remarkable. The Second Amendment Preservation Act has been filed by Dane Eagle, a representative, and it would essentially nullify federal gun laws, past, present, and future, by having the state of Florida refuse to enforce federal gun laws. The only way the federal government can get away with their anti-constitutional laws, and any law is anti-constitutional if it is not listed as a power, if it is not enumerated, if it has not been delegated to the Constitution by the people in the states. It is an anti-constitutional act. And Article 6 of the Constitution says exactly that. Every law must be pursuant to the Constitution. And if it's not, it's null and void. And states have every right not to assist the enforcement of it. And that's what the Second Amendment Preservation Act does. Now, I got to tell you, there has been I've noticed over about the last year, but maybe even longer, 10th Amendment centers sprouting across the country. And in Florida, there is also a 10th Amendment center. And we have sort of allied ourselves with them because what the 10th Amendment does is point out that the federal government is not supreme, but rather it is a different kind of relationship between the states and the federal government. The 10th Amendment says if it is not listed in the Constitution, the federal government has no business, no legal authority, no legitimate authority to be doing it. Anything not listed in the U.S. Constitution is the business of the states and the people. Here's how the 10th Amendment actually reads. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And right now we've got the Florida 10th Amendment Center pushing to protect the Second Amendment. And I'm thrilled to have back with us Francisco Rodriguez, the Outreach Director for the Florida 10th Amendment Center. Francisco, how are you?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show today.
Glad to have you on. Did I get that intro about right?
You got it exactly right.
Perfect.
And I actually missed a call from your team a minute ago because I was literally on the phone with Dane Eagle when they called, and I was just trying to finish up a phone call with him, and I have to call him back. I'm really glad to be on the show. We have some important information to talk about, and we need the help of all the listeners and really the power of the people of the state of Florida to take action, because we're at a pretty big crossroads here.
We're at a crossroad because there is a bill filed in the House of Representatives, of which there are 120 members in Florida, but there must be a companion bill in the Florida Senate, of which there are 40 members, and the president of the Senate is Don Gates. And right now, my understanding is there is not a Senate companion bill, and if there is not one, we will not get this passed into law in the state of Florida. What's the latest status on that?
So we, as the 10th Amendment Center of Florida, we have worked very closely with John Hallman of Liberty First. They're the only liberty lobbyist in the state of Florida. And he made a personal visit, I believe it was 2 days ago. I was actually traveling for work in Jolene's old stopping grounds of Wisconsin, but I heard back that he visited every single senator with a package, which included the bill, the draft that's currently in the Senate, submitted by Senator Evers, and talking points, and he got feedback. I don't know if every single one of them gave feedback, but everybody that gave feedback says because the NRA does not support this bill, and we won't remove the language that says past, present, and future, no senator will take a stand on this bill.
Okay, tell me about Senator Evers again. What did he do specifically?
Well, he did us a favor. He submitted a draft, and if we didn't have a draft, we would not be having this conversation today.
Right.
Because the timing to submit a draft and eventually get a bill number has already passed.
Yeah, and I had Senator Evers on the show recently, and I had gotten a response by Senator Don Gates that said, unfortunately, the time had passed, and I take your it was a form letter. I value your opinion, and maybe if the issue's still around next year, we'll look at it again. But Senator Don Gates, the president of the Senate, he sent out a letter saying the time had already passed, but since a draft bill had been submitted by Senator Evers, it is still at least alive?
It's still alive, and it can be all it needs is a sponsor, and we have 15 days from today to get a sponsor, and all we need is one senator. And this is a shocking part. To the senator, at least the ones that verbally spoke or their aides spoke for them, to the senator, not one believes that federal laws that currently violate the Second Amendment, that have existed since 1935's gun legislation, is something that we should stop supporting. They believe that the federal government can use state resources based on their position. They believe the federal government should be able to use our state resources to violate the Second Amendment rights of citizens in the state of Florida, and not one of them will take a sponsorship position on this bill. This is the strongest Second Amendment bill in the state of Florida's history, period.
I'm writing this down. You're saying that all 40 senators in the state of Florida believe that the federal government can use our state resources to enforce anti-constitutional federal gun laws.
That's from the senators that responded, and I don't have the exact list, but I'll say that 40 of them have not sponsored this legislation, and every single one that responded said they're not going to sponsor it unless it gets rid of the terms past and present, which makes it essentially irrelevant.
It neuters
all
it.
Of the past. It makes it irrelevant to all the past. The only thing that it does...
It neuters it completely.
Completely. The only thing that it does is it stops from future potential legislation passed by the Congress or by executive order of the president. So it does nothing to protect the state of Florida. Our position and the position of Supreme Court cases, which you can take with
exactly.
you have to take with a grain of salt, but the position of those cases, our position, is the anti-commandeering doctrine. We're not saying the federal government can't come in and enforce their own laws. We know how difficult it will be to do it. All we're saying is you cannot use our state resources.
What the anti-commandeering is it the Anti-Commandeering Act? Is that what you said, or doctrine?
Anti-commandeering doctrine. It's a legal doctrine that says I can't force you as a federal government to do my bidding for me.
Yeah, I understand. And the way last time you and I talked, a formulation popped up in my head, and basically it says that states will not resist federal laws, but we will not assist.
Correct.
All right.
That's right.
This is a big deal because 2 days ago, the last couple of days, when I saw that Marion Hammer, the top lobbyist for the NRA in the state of Florida, who scares the hell out of every single person in the Capitol, and she was former NRA president, the NRA is saying that we have grave concerns. As you know, we have grave concerns, says the NRA, about the Second Amendment Preservation Act because they said it would nullify our good federal gun laws. So what the NRA's position is basically is that the federal government has the authority to make law, even though it's not in the Constitution. The NRA is basically empowering the federal government to make federal gun laws because they believe they can get good ones passed. The problem with that is if you empower the federal government to make laws in areas that it has no authority, you're going to have to deal with their bad laws as well. The NRA is basically trying to keep itself relevant as lobbyists in Washington, D.C. They are putting themselves above the Second Amendment, Francisco.
Well, we have a position that, listen, we just want to have a conversation about it. If you want to protect the Second Amendment, then tell us how this bill will actually not protect the Second Amendment. Because if that's what we're about, if we're about the right to keep and bear arms, and we're about not having the federal government infringe on that right, which was a very specific term. It wasn't an arbitrary, verb that they used in the writing of the Constitution during the ratifying convention when they established the Bill of Rights. This was a very specific term, and it was written for a reason. And so if you're against or if you have confusion around any of those things, or if this bill isn't clear on how it would do that, we can have the discussion, and that's all we want to do. We want to have the discussion with the NRA.
The rights.
I've written Marion Hammer personally, and I've asked her I personally asked her to say, hey, where can we work on this so that we're in agreement that this is protecting the Second Amendment and it's not stopping the federal government. This is the thing. The NRA can still work on its good laws if it wants to. All we're saying is that the state of Florida won't enforce federal gun laws, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, because they have no authority. Your position stands on principle and on constitutional. The entire point of the Constitution. Francisco, I have to take a quick break, but I can't wait to get back with you and talk about it. I knew this would happen. I said it would happen. I said the NRA is going to scare the ever-living out of every single Republican that would have normally taken up support of something like this, and it's exactly what's happening. Republicans now have cover to not support the Second Amendment Preservation Act because the NRA is putting pressure on them. It's a very interesting thing that's happening, and this is why I talk about the end of politics in America. I'm telling you, and Francisco won't say it, but I will. This is a matter of the NRA versus the Second Amendment. Back with the Florida 10th Amendment Center in just a moment.
You're listening to the Burnie Thompson Show. Email Burnie at myfreedomradio.com. This is the Burnie Thompson Show, your 21st century town hall.
Back with Francisco Rodriguez with the 10th Amendment Center, the Florida 10th Amendment Center. And let's see, Francisco, you still with us?
I am.
Thank you. This is a short segment. Do you have time to stick around for the longer segment coming up?
I definitely do.
Because I want to just get everybody caught up. Again, the Second Amendment Preservation Act filed in the House of Florida by Dane Eagle. We need a companion bill in the Senate. Thanks to Senator Greg Evers, who I have great respect for, by the way, and he and I have gone at it a few times in the past, but he is so accessible, and he is a courageous – I'm not even going to call him a politician. He really is not. He is too courageous and honest to be called that. Anyway, he has filed a draft bill, and now not a single member of the 40 senators in the state are willing to put their name on it. We have 2 weeks to get somebody to sponsor it, or it's going to die, isn't it?
It is, and the reality is we don't just have a sponsor in the House. We have 10 co-sponsors within a week of sponsorship. So the House has stepped up, the Senate has not, and all we need somebody to do is to take Senator Evers' draft, sponsor it, and let the grassroots do the rest.
What do you think Will Weatherford, the House Speaker, had a lot to do with that? Because you and I know that the Speaker of the House has a lot to do with who's going to sponsor. And the president of the Senate, Don Gates, also has an iron fist in terms of what people are willing to do. Did Speaker Weatherford help you out?
He didn't come to us directly, and so I don't know any interaction. We worked directly with Representative Dane Eagle. We had other people that had said they'd be willing to sponsor. Interestingly enough, those people that said they were willing to sponsor, they're more they've been in the House for a longer period of time, but they have not co-sponsored. So it's a bit concerning that they didn't co-sponsor. We've worked directly with Dane Eagle. He actually took a strong position to not change the wording of the bill to fit the NRA's wording of
which would eviscerate the entire purpose of the bill.
Completely, and it wouldn't even be a symbolic bill. It would literally be a waste of everybody's time, completely.
That is what I respect about you guys, by the way, in the Florida 10th Amendment Center. You're not just blowing hot air. You are actually trying to put teeth into protecting the supreme law of the land. I'm ticked off, quite frankly, that states have to file laws to protect the Constitution. It is a waste of time, but it's better than these state legislators passing beer bills and other stuff that they're spending time doing. But I do need to announce the good work that they do, Francisco. It really is only fair. This is what they're doing because I want to make sure I give both sides of the story. They are working tirelessly, Francisco, for a Pop-Tart gun bill that would not punish children with simulated weapons at school. So if they get their way, kids will never again be punished for making a gun out of a Pop-Tart. So let's be fair, they are doing some work there.
Yeah, sadly, that doesn't. The majority of the crimes of the government have very little to do with children having a Pop-Tart shaped gun. It has more to do with the Second Amendment being violated. So I do understand that they are passing some legislation with regard to a warning shot being fired or questions insurance companies can ask. Those aren't actually stopping the federal government. There are some brave enough souls to sign on to the Pop-Tart gun bill. But what we need them to do in the Senate is sign on to the Second Amendment Preservation Act. When we get back, I want to ask you if there are some senators that you know of who are teetering, who are close, who really want to, that might just need a little encouragement. Back with the Florida 10th Amendment Center in just a minute.
This is the Burnie Thompson Show. No Bolshevik. He's America's voice of freedom. This is the Burnie Thompson Show.
What we need to get some funk in the Florida Senate, Francisco.
Yes, we do.
We need to get some funky Florida senators to say, yeah, we support and defend the Second Amendment. This I knew, and you did too, which is what we've only talked twice, but I have such respect for you, not only because you've got the name of Dagny's lover in Atlas Shrugged, not only because of that, But because you guys knew this was an uphill battle, and you know we may not win this time, but you know what we're doing? We're smoking those who only give lip service out, and we're not going to stop. We've got 2 weeks to get a Florida senator to sponsor this bill.
That's what we need. We need one senator to stand strong. And I know you asked in the before the break whether there is one. I went ahead and sent a text to my good friend John Hallman. I've known John since I was, I think, 19, almost 20 years old. I've known him for years, and just said, hey, I just want to clarify. Do you know of one senator? And he said, not one, because of Marion Hammer.
Yep.
So none of them are teetering. None of them are a possibility. This has to be 100% from the grassroots. We have action steps people can take to engage their senators. We have action steps. We have talking points. We have a number of things. Phone calls work best.
Well, you know what you're going to have too, Francisco? You're going to have every active member of this radio family who believes in the Second Amendment Act, every member of this radio family who is fed up with lobbyists, even if it's the Second Amendment lobbyists. We are going to find out who in the Senate is going to stand with the people instead of the lobbyists to protect the Second Amendment. We're going to help you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. You're not obviously, you're not just helping us. We are literally helping.
Oops, I'm sorry, Francisco. I'm sorry. I just pushed a button there. You not only are we helping you, we're literally helping who?
Millions of people in Florida to that will have to either face federal gun laws that violate the Second Amendment, or be afraid of them, so that we can't defend our liberty. And that's what we're doing. And I know that that's what your people believe in. That's what we believe in. And our liberties are much too precious to let 40 guys determine whether we have them or not. 40 people, men and women.
Let me tell you how much we are working on the grassroots level on this program. You ready for this? We've got two out of 67 sheriffs. Sheriff Frank McKeithen of Bay County and Sheriff Nick Finch of Liberty County. I have asked directly Sheriff Frank McKeithen if a federal agent knocks on our door, because I was getting reports that the ATF were knocking on doors asking for serial numbers of guns in Tallahassee. Wow. If a single federal or state agent knocks on your door and asks you questions about your guns, will you establish in this county a hotline number for citizens to call and say, just one moment, hotline number, and the sheriff himself rolls in to find out what's going on? Sheriff Frank McKeithen has committed to that, and I know that Sheriff Nick Finch in Liberty County would do likewise. Hotline numbers to come stand with the citizens while the state or the federal government asks questions about their guns. That is grassroots, and counties could do that even if our state refuses to help us.
Burnie, liberty must go local, and that's exactly what you're talking about. We need to stop looking at D.C. We need to stop worrying about the messages coming from D.C.
Yep.
We need to look to our neighbors, connect with our neighbors, and let them know that our liberty is on the line. And it's really the impact. The impact of liberty is not a national impact. It's really a personal impact, and we gotta stop focusing on the big numbers, the big things. We need to focus on the personal and the community impact, because typically we don't travel 10, 20 miles outside of our community on a regular basis. That is where liberty has to be protected. Whether it's protected in D.C. is irrelevant. Whether it's protected in Tallahassee, it definitely helps, and that's where we want to focus. But I think you hit it on the head. Liberty has to be protected locally, because locally is the only place that matters to the individual.
And we have learned that sheriffs have the highest ranking elected constable in the county. Not even the FBI can bust in a door on a drug raid without permission from a sheriff. I mean, the sheriffs are the most powerful people in their counties, and sheriffs are learning that.
And that needs to continue. That needs to grow. And I think that as sheriffs are empowered, what obviously is concerning is sheriffs getting federal money. So we need to make sure that we find the sheriffs that are on our team, support them, and those that will oppose federal infringement of our rights, specifically laws that are enumerated in the Constitution. These are clear. These aren't questionable. And we need to have our sheriffs taking a position that would say, not in our county.
Francisco Rodriguez with the Florida 10th Amendment Center. I'm thrilled to have an ally, as I'm sure you need allies, because, as Thomas Jefferson said, the natural progression of things is for government to gain ground and liberty to yield. And the eternal vigilance he spoke about is what we're engaged in right now. I'm going to go to a phone call in just a minute. One of the smartest guys I know about the Second Amendment and a retired naval commander. But I want to ask you a question first. It is my belief that the federal government has become destructive to our rights. And as stated in the Declaration of Independence, that means it is not only our right but our duty to alter or abolish the federal government. Do you believe that it has gotten to the point that the federal government is destructive to our rights and ought to be altered or abolished? I do.
I believe that the only way to oppose a large power is by equal or greater power. And so how you alter is very important. I believe that we can alter. I don't know that they would be abolished in any sort of reasonable way, but I believe we can alter. And the way that altering has historically worked has been states not complying with federal laws. The federal government tried to keep slavery going for years with the Fugitive Slave Act. So when slaves would leave the South, go to the North, they would not be free of the federal government going in, grabbing them, and bringing them back south. But the Northern abolitionists made laws that said anyone who supports or helps the federal government bring a runaway slave from our state back to the South, they will lose their job. They will not be able. They were putting restrictions on state officers, and that caused what many would say was the actions that the federal government's laws became virtually irrelevant. So that's our action, that's our position, that's how we alter the destructive government that we have.
I want you to reconsider something, Francisco. When you say that the only way to oppose power is with equal or greater power, the great book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu, suggests that perhaps sometimes a lesser power can defeat a greater power if we have a better strategy, if we have more commitment, if we have more courage, and if we understand our enemy better than they understand us. We've seen examples of this everywhere from Samson and Goliath to there are stories after stories of smaller, weaker armies defeating greater, bigger armies. And I think with the hand of providence and a little good luck, sometimes we can defeat a greater power.
I think you're right. What I'm referring to is that Washington has no power if people don't give them that power, and so we move our power distribution because, as the 10th Amendment says, the power is not delegated. Well, we didn't delegate these powers, so where do they possess it from? So we transition our attention, which is the power of the individual, and I believe that's why the power is greater. And you said it exactly correct. With divine providence in David and Goliath, you all of a sudden have a more powerful David. With divine providence, you all of a sudden have a more powerful Gideon. With divine providence, you have seemingly smaller because they had an all-powerful. So any power against all-powerful is so it's always a greater power defeating a lesser power. We just have to understand that the power lies in the individual, and yes, in a God that gives us those powers, and a God that can be powerful for us. But it's always a greater power defeating a seemingly greater power, and we just have to understand where power resides. And so I don't disagree with your position. But
now that you've clarified it, we agree completely. You are a treasure, Francisco Rodriguez. You are a treasure for liberty. I'm telling you, it's rare that I talk to people who so succinctly and with such conviction can articulate the principles of freedom. I'm sitting across from another young man right now who does the same, who's going to join me in the next segment, Tho Bishop. But when you say that we are going to basically take away some of the power of the federal government, I want everybody to be clear about this strategy that I've only just learned about, and that is this is how we reduce the power of the federal government. We as states say that we're not going to resist you, federal government, but we are not going to assist you. And if states do not enforce federal laws, that weakens the power of the federal government. That is a fantastic strategy. Hey, I want to go to this call. Bobby, a friend of mine, one of the smartest guys I know and most knowledgeable about the Second Amendment and liberty. Bobby, meet, by the way, retired Lieutenant Commander. Bobby, meet Francisco Rodriguez with the Florida 10th Amendment Center.
Hey, Francisco, I believe I've met you over in Tallahassee in a couple of the rallies over there.
Yes, sir. I hope we've met. I don't know if we've gotten to meet personally, but it's great to meet you over the phone, Bobby.
Great. It's important to people realize that the Supreme Court has already opined. They don't rule. They can decide whatever they want, but it's inconsequential, especially when all branches are colluding against liberty. But in Sheriff Mack and Sheriff Prince versus USA, on the federal court case of 97, Scalia of the Supreme Court opined that the federal government cannot make a state do something. It cannot use its resources to enforce or make people comply with federal regulation. So I find it very difficult to swallow that nobody in the Senate will stand up and say, well, you know what? The federal Supreme Court has said exactly what we're trying to do here with this great bill that we're putting through the state here in Florida. And it shows actually the pusillanimity of the character of those people in the Senate in Florida.
I couldn't agree more. I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't walked through the process myself. But literally, we had somebody personally visit every single senator in the state of Florida in Tallahassee, went to their office just earlier this week, and to the senator, the ones that gave a response through their aides, not one will sponsor the bill that says we will not comply as a state of Florida or any of our subsidiaries with federal laws or the federal government that violate our citizens' Second Amendment rights. Not one. And I don't want to discourage you, but I think it goes back to our earlier discussion, Bernie, on power. The power lies with the people. 40 men do not rule over 18 million citizens. 40 senators, men and women, do not rule over 18 million citizens. They represent. And you and I understand what representation means. So if they know what they're supposed to represent, they're not supposed to represent the NRA. They're not supposed to represent, even their own ideas. They are supposed to represent the constituents of their district.
Well, here's what's going to happen, Francisco. I'm telling you, this is what is going to happen. And Bobby, you and I have been through this before with battles as we have linked arms with the rest of this radio family to bounce Alan Boyd out on his ear and to save and do our best to protect the sheriff of Liberty County against what happened to him. And we're about to do it again. The ground in Tallahassee, Francisco, is going to rumble with hundreds and hundreds of phone calls. And we're going to find out which Florida senators are more beholden to the NRA lobbyists than they are to the people and the Constitution, because we're going to blow those phone lines up, and they're going to realize the pressure is not only coming from the lobbyists, it's coming from the people they represent.
Yeah, and the key thing is their oath. They made an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. That is sacred. That's what they support. And they don't need no more law. Like I told Boyd, I don't need a new legislation to be more free than what the Creator made me. What part of shall not be infringed, you people don't get. It's a very simple concept. Stand with your oath. If not, we can't stand with you because you change your mind about what you're supposed to do and you're somebody else's pocket. And we'll call it out like it is. So I really, really hope, Senator Gates is a great guy. I think he needs to stand up and say, you know what, I'm going to pass this, put the companion bill in the Senate. I think if he can change his mind about the medicinal marijuana, which is a liberty issue as well, I think this one is far more important because if not, they're going to be knocking on his door one day.
Yeah. Hey, Bobby, thanks for the call. And Francisco, we have to take a very quick break. One more segment with you. I cannot thank you enough for spending an entire hour with us. You were actually on the phone with the sponsor of the bill, Dane Eagle, the representative. And I promise you that you'll find out that we do not stop on issues like this. We've been doing this here for about 8 years. And when it comes to standing up and defending the Constitution, we'll stand with you together. We will not falter. Back with Francisco Rodriguez from the Florida 10th Amendment Center.
You want to play what? Okay. Say hello to my little friend.
You're listening to The Burnie Thompson Show. Catch The Burnie Thompson Show online at myfreedomradio.com. This is The Burnie Thompson Show, your 21st century town hall.
Back with Francisco Rodriguez, 10th Amendment Center here in Florida, who is pushing as hard as they can for the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which would essentially nullify all past, present, and federal gun laws by having the state of Florida refuse to enforce federal laws, which is a strategy being used all across this country for every issue from Obamacare to others. We've got about 2 minutes, Francisco, and I want to give it to you so you can tell us the importance of the next steps. How can we help most?
So the next steps are really simple. We have 2 steps we got on our website. It's fltac.org. That's fltac.org/2A, which stands for Second Amendment. So fltac.org/2A. There are literally step 1, step 2. Step 1, ask your senator, your state senator, to sponsor a companion bill. We put some text in there specifically responding to questions that the NRA posed through one of their through one of their writers, somebody that writes stuff for the NRA sometimes. So we've put some responses there dealing with the current HB 733, and then we give you an opportunity to call. So the step 1 is an email. Step 2 is a call. Calls are much more valuable, as you know, probably Bernie, that the calls are much more valuable to legislators. So it's fltac.org/2A. And I want to do something, Bernie, right now, because I think it's important that we in Florida realize we are not alone. There's literally a Senate battle in with this bill, similar legislation, in Missouri, happening right now, going head-to-head with the NRA, and there's some victories happening.
Yeah, across the states, there are some legislatures that are standing against the special interest and for the people.
And the people have an opportunity to transition the minds of senators, because those senators some of them are up for election. And we have great House sponsors, a great House sponsor, and 10 co-sponsors. We need the Senate to step up. We need the people to let them know this is your responsibility. This is your oath of office. This is the bill that will actually protect the Second Amendment. No Pop-Tarts, no insurance companies, et cetera, et cetera. This bill protects the Second
Francisco,
Amendment.
we'll do it again soon. We're going to help you. I'm going to put all this information up on our website, and we're going to blow those phones up today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you for all you're doing.
You got it. I got to run. We'll be right back.
This is the Burnie Thompson Show.